So today we're going to learn about Hippo, what it is and how it applies to our APUSH exam. So what is Hippo? Hippo is a tool that we use to analyze sources on the test. So it is used on the AP test to analyze sources that are given to us. Where is it used? So where exactly do we use it on the AP test? In the multiple choice section, so the 55 questions you guys have in the first part. In the SAQs, the short answer questions that we have in the beginning. The document-based questions, the DBQs, which happen after. And finally, the long essay. So Hippo is used on all 4 parts of the AP test. What does Hippo stand for? What does this acronym stand for? The H stands for historical context. The I for intended audience. The P for purpose. The other P for point of view, and the O for outside information. So we're going to go through each one of them individually so that we understand what Hippo, the acronym of Hippo and how it works. Okay, so we're going to start off with historical context, the H. Historical context, it means to contextualize means to understand an event in terms of what is surrounding it. So basically like the setting, what's happening around it. What is the setting, the historical context? So when you think of historical context, think of setting. In other words, background or the big picture. What is happening before, during, and after? So you have a source. What is happening around the source? Why was the source written? Think about when the source was written and what is happening around the source during this time, before, during, and after. That influences the source. For example, understanding the female perspective during the suffrage movement. So the suffrage movement that happened in the early 20th century, we knew that the suffrage movement for women was happening because, and it was pushed because more women were demanding their rights. They were demanding more of a push for equality because World War I had just happened. So a lot of women started to work and started to get more independence, hence them wanting the right to vote. So what was happening around the women's suffrage movement, that's the historical context. Some of the questions that rise during historical context that you want to answer in historical context are: where and when was the source created? What was going on at the time? What has just happened? And is this document a reaction to some event? Oh, and how does this source represent the period? So basically the setting of the source. The next one is intended audience. So if you're going to analyze a source with intended audience, what it means by that is intended audience is it can be an individual, a group, an entity, or a self. An entity is like a government. An example is who was intended to read the Declaration of Independence. An example of this is who was intended to read the Declaration of Independence. So when Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, who was he writing it for? Was he writing it for King George? Was he writing it for the colonists? Was he writing it for his family? Who wasn't the intended audience for the Declaration of Independence? Some of the questions that fall under this are: to whom is this piece directed? One piece, a small group or large, one person, a small group, or a large group, a certain person or a certain people, and how might this affect the reliability or accuracy of the source? So can we trust the person who wrote the source based on intended audience? So can we trust this person, or are they going to be biased? Next one up is purpose. It refers to the intended goal of the source. What was the point of, why did they write this source? It is attempting to educate, question, or reject something. For example, why did Hamilton publish the Federalist Papers? What was Hamilton trying to do in the Federalist Papers? So if your source is the Federalist Papers, and you're focusing on purpose, what was he trying to do? Some of the questions that fall under purpose is: why was the source produced? What was the author trying to accomplish? Did he or she have ulterior motives? And that's it. Next one up is point of view. In the point of view, you're looking at the author as an individual in order to determine bias. So you're not looking at the source, you're looking at who wrote the source, so that you could determine if the person who wrote it, the author, is biased or not. Bias means that they favor one side over the other. An example of this is: can we trust McCarthy to inform the president about the war with China after World War II? So if you're analyzing the source in the form of point of view, you're judging McCarthy, who wrote the source. So McCarthy is a general, he's all about war. So can we really trust him to inform the president about China during the Cold War if we know that he's going to favor war? Can we really trust him to be unbiased? So we're judging the author of the source. Some of the questions that you want to answer if you're focusing on point of view are: what is the main idea? What point is the author trying to make? And how does the author's background or position impact the message? For example, race, class, gender, age, region, occupation, values, and motives. So all this matters when we look at point of view. And last but not least, outside info. Look at other historical examples, ideas, events, issues from the time period of the document. So you have a source. If you're focusing on outside information, if you want to back up that source, if you're trying to argue something about that source and you want to back it up, outside information is a perfect thing to do that, because you get to bring other documents in to help you support that. So for example, if you're analyzing, again, the Declaration of Independence, you might want to use the Intolerable Acts, which is another historical piece, to back it up as a response to the Intolerable Acts. So the Declaration of Independence was written as a response to the Intolerable Acts. So you're bringing in outside information of the Intolerable Acts to defend the Declaration of Independence, or to defend your argument on the Declaration of Independence. Some of the questions that fall under here are: how does your analysis of this document fit into your argument? And does it provide a counter argument? What outside info does it support? So you are going to be doing this whenever you do an outside source.